Hello, this is Bill Carmody, and I'm the Marketing Whisperer. Today on my program, I am so thrilled to have one of my mentors, Seth Godin. Hey, Seth, how are you doing today?
I'm great, Bill. Thanks for doing this.
Seth, first of all, congratulations on being inducted into the American Marketing Association's Hall of Fame. That's amazing. You well deserved.
Thank you.
Over 30 years of just doing incredible work in the marketing industry. You've got 18 best-selling books published in 35 different languages. Amazing accomplishments. So thank you so much for being here today.
Well, it's a privilege to do this work, and I wouldn't be able to do it if it weren't for people like you who are along for the ride. So thank you.
Thank you very much. And what a ride it's been. So listen, I've read almost all of your books, and this is by far one of my favorites. So this is Marketing, coming out next month. What's phenomenal about this is that you really have taken so many of the concepts that you've done all over the years, and you've really put it into the most pertinent pieces. So somebody who's wanting to really get deep into marketing can understand the essence of what both you're all about and also where you think the marketing industry should go. So my first question is, having written 18 best-selling books, why this one? What are you wanting to accomplish with this book?
I don't do any consulting, and I do try to help people I care about with work they're doing for free. And a lot of times I would be sitting with a nonprofit or an entrepreneur or somebody who's trying to change the world. And I kept going over the same ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And it became clear to me that the old model of steal attention, run ads, figure out how to make money wasn't marketing anymore. It's just what we called it. And there needed to be a line in the sand, and we needed to say that was marketing, but that's not marketing anymore. This thing we do now, this is marketing, and you're a marketer. You're a marketer whether you want to be one or not. And so I built a seminar called themarketingseminar.com, and we've had 6,600 people take it. It lasts 100 days, and it's fully transformative. The people who are in it, they're getting 50 lessons from me, but mostly they're interacting with each other. They're building things. So I got to watch the whole time, all 6,000 of these people, what resonated, what didn't. And I realized that opportunity to turn that learning into a handy, portable package that we call a book, I should do that. So I made this book, even though it's super hard to make a book, and as you know, it takes a lot out of you.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like this moment in time for this audience, it was the right thing in the right moment.
Beautiful. And one of the questions I had about this particular book is about the change you're looking to create. So understanding that all of these books, you're looking to create some sort of change. What kind of change are you looking to make with this book?
So what is marketing, right? Marketing is not advertising. Marketing is not poking people. Marketing is making change happen.
Yes.
If no change occurs, then you're not a marketer. You're just wasting people's time. So I take my own advice pretty seriously. So the question is, what change am I trying to make? And the change I'm trying to make is help people make things better by making better things. I would like to help people realize that doing work that matters for people who care is an option. And that if they could dig in and do that thing, I think we'd all benefit. And so this book is designed not to help the short-term hustler, not to help the shortcutter. I got a note from someone this morning in Italy saying, could you give me advice on how to pick up women? No, I can't, actually. Sorry.
And yet that's marketing. No, it's not. I know. So one of the things that's funny is that you talk about sort of the need for tension in your book in order to move away from the status quo. We're all fighting against the status quo, including marketers. This idea of interruption marketing, you've been fighting this since permission marketing back in the mid-90s. And so what tension must we create in order to break the status quo of a lot of the more sort of traditional interruption type marketing that still exists today?
Okay, so there are two things going on in our culture. One thing, as Tim Wu has pointed out, is that a vast majority of privileged people want convenience, and they're willing to trade huge parts of their freedom and their income for convenience. But the other thing that's going on that has not been talked about is every time change happens, every time we have a chance to do something different, even if it's just drive on a different route to work, tension occurs. It's the tension of this might not work. The tension of maybe I did the wrong thing. The tension of maybe I'm overpaying, the tension of what will my friends think. What marketers do then, if we seek to make change, is we inflict tension on other people. And we cannot deny that. We
Yes.
have to embrace it. And we have to be able to say to ourselves, this tension I've created, it's worth it. Because when you get through the tension, you'll be glad you did. Right?
Yes.
And that leap forward requires responsibility on your part, but also requires confidence on your part to be able to say, yes, I know that I'm making you uncomfortable when I describe this new mattress as so much better than your old mattress. Well, if I do that, I've just made your old mattress somehow defective.
Yes.
I created tension in your life that wasn't there yesterday. Am I okay doing that? Well, should only be okay doing that if after you get this mattress, you'll thank me. If that's not true, if I'm just doing it to make a living, then I think we can see how selfish it is to be that kind of marketer. Because what you did not only was take that person's money, you inflicted tension on them, and they got nothing to show for it.
You know, and one great example of that tension was you talked about having to break things, and you used the mattress example here. Tesla is another great example that in order to sort of show what a new car could look like, being able to update every week as opposed to having to change models every 9 to 10 years, you know, they had to break the sort of mold of what people were used to and comfortable in the car industry. So applying the same logic now to marketers, we know that the status quo of marketers is interruption. It's getting people trying to take their attention away from what else they were trying to do. We want to break that pattern because we really want to focus on authentic storytelling and ways to engage the audience at a much deeper level. So talk to me about, in your vision here, is this book the tension, or is there something else that's going to create the tension so that marketers can see that there's actually a better way of doing all of this?
Well, one thing I talk about in the book is there's only a dozen or 2 dozen basic human emotions that are attainable.
Yeah.
And so no one actually needs a 1/4-inch drill bit or even a 1/4-inch hole. That people need to feel secure. People need to feel seen. People need to feel joy, right?
Yes.
Well, marketers and people who work in organizations don't want to interrupt other people. What they want is to please their boss.
Mm-hmm.
What they want is the satisfaction of knowing they're not in debt anymore. What they want is knowing that they made a positive change in the universe. So if we, and you're a leader in this too, communicate to people that people like us don't do marketing like that, that
Yes.
that the way you are behaving is old-fashioned, inefficient, sort of shameful, selfish, people are going to do it less. Because it's not that they want to spam people and call them on the phone during dinner. It's just they want what that often got them. And now we're saying that feeling you're looking for, you can get that feeling, that state, that outcome in a way that you are more proud of. And if you don't shift, your competition's going to. And now you're going to get a new emotion, which is the horrible emotion of I'm falling behind.
I love that. And that's another concept you just touched on, which really resonated with me, which is people like us do things like this. And I feel like, you know, we're all in these different tribes and we're all together in this marketing tribe. So this idea of people like us do things like this, it's not just what we don't do, but what we do. And sort of, I think some of the examples you used in the book were about masterful storytelling and understanding how do you attract your tribe as opposed to interrupt them and annoy them. So rather than calling you on the phone and saying, hey, I want to interrupt your dinner so I can sell you something, it's when you're actively seeking out what are other marketers doing that is effective, they're going to be able to send that signal because people like us are doing things like this and getting the result that you're looking to achieve. Does that make sense?
It totally does. I mean, so what's a culture? A culture is a simple construct. It's a group of people who believe that people like us do things like this.
Yes.
So if you show up at a wedding in a clown suit, you're not people like us.
Right.
How do I know you're not people like us? Because you're not doing things like us, like this. Right. You've been disrespectful. So what does it mean to be a marketer who makes change happen is we define a culture, a tiny pocket of culture, which leads to the one of the core ideas of the smallest viable audience. You cannot change the whole culture. You just can't. Yes. That, you know, people these days, are talking about Allbirds, you know, these,
Mhm.
I can't get on the screen.
The shoe. Yeah.
Allbirds, the shoe. Well, the thing is, almost no one has a pair of Allbirds. Maybe they've sold 1 million, and that's separate sneakers. So 500,000 pair, maybe. That's not that many.
Yeah.
It's a lot for them. And in the pocket of Menlo Park, you can walk around Menlo Park and, oh, people like me, this is what we wear. No one's wearing Fry boots in Menlo Park. We're all wearing Allbirds, right? So that's what it means to address the smallest viable audience. You're not trying to change everything. You're trying to find a pocket where you can show up in a way that people can look at each other and go, yeah, you and me, we're on the same team.
And sticking with that concept, one of the other things that I really liked about this book is you talk about great marketing attracts volunteers, not victims. And so this idea of how do I attract more volunteers versus creating victims in my marketing. Talk to me a little bit more about that.
Okay, so getting a student to learn something against their will is very difficult. Mandatory education is sort of an oxymoron.
Mm-hmm.
That enrollment has a very specific meaning. Are you enrolled in this journey? If you're going where I'm going, I don't have to keep hustling you along. If you're going where I'm going, I can just turn on the lights and we can go there together.
Right.
And so when we think about marketers who have banal products, who have decided that they sell a commodity, they're right. They are selling a commodity. So, you know, I have drywall on the walls of my office. You have drywall on the walls of your office. Neither one of us knows what kind of drywall it is, because the people who have made the drywall have chosen to be commodity suppliers. I'm just going to buy the cheap one.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're a marketer of drywall, you have a choice, which is you can figure out how to use sharp elbows to hustle your way somehow to the front of the line, or you can change something about your product, something about the way your product is used, so that the tribe of people who see themselves as a certain kind of forward-thinking contractor, the circle of people who go to a certain kind of supplier, align themselves with your message and you with theirs, so that when they are installing your product, they feel better about themselves, so that they are happy to put your logo on the bumper of their car, so that they see in what you are doing a version of them. And I picked drywall as an example because it's so extreme, but it's still doable. So in the case of the contractor, just look at the DeWalt bright yellow logo and their, you know, lithium battery stuff. That contractor has a choice of 10 different companies that will sell them a lithium tool, but they're buying DeWalt because it means something to be in that circle. They are volunteers.
That's beautiful. And in 2008, you had the Content Marketing Institute had quoted you as one of the interviews you were having for, I think it was Meatball Sunday, that said, you know, content marketing is really the only marketing left. So 10 years later, do you still agree with that?
Okay, I'm really glad you brought this up.
Thank you.
Because that's not what I meant.
Okay.
So what is content marketing? There's two things. Content marketing is either the marketing of what you got, the marketing of who you actually are. That's what I meant. Or there's this other capital C, capital M content marketing, which is how do I write a listicle that somehow tricks somebody into somehow reading more of my stuff.
Okay.
That's not what I was talking about.
Okay, good.
But the content marketers of the world decided that that's what I meant, and there's no way to take it back. So
there it is. Well, no, but it's interesting because actually we're seeing saturation of the capital C, capital F, right? Because what's happened is everyone thinks that that's what they need to do. And so they just keep putting more and more and more and more listicles. And now we've got total saturation. And so what you're finding is it's actually the signal through the noise problem in content. You know,
Exactly.
how is our tribe finding the content that's really relevant to them, not just, you know, sort of spamming the search engines. So
exactly. And so, you know, my bigger arc over this is, would they miss you if you're gone?
Yes.
If you took down all of your capital C, capital N content marketing, how many people would call you on the phone and say, where is it?
Put it back up.
Right. Because if no one's going to call you then you're not actually creating useful content. You're just spamming under another name.
So let's go to what the real content is here, which is the art of storytelling. And so understanding how effective storytelling gets out to people. This is sort of the key tenet here, because if you're looking for people like us do things like this, and you're trying to use powerful stories to connect authentically with an audience, what are some of the nuances there in terms of that sort of, bleeding into content marketing, right? There's a fine line here that really makes sense.
Okay, so storytelling has nothing to do with the Brothers Grimm, Once Upon a Time, even Joseph Campbell. That's not what I'm talking about.
Okay.
Excuse me. What I'm talking about is empathy. No one knows what you know. No one needs what you need. No one wants what you want. No one believes what you believe. That's just true.
Yeah.
So what does it mean to have empathy? What it means to have empathy is to say, I acknowledge that I am not you. I acknowledge that I'm not a woman. I acknowledge that I don't live in New Orleans. I acknowledge that I need to wear glasses and you don't. Great. Will I now have the humility to come to you with words you understand about ideas you care about, to tell you a story that resonates with you so that you can get what you want and what you need? And if I can't find the empathy to do that, then I'm not a professional marketer. But if I can, well, then of course I'm going to tell you a story. Now, the story might be, if you're an engineer, a list of specs, right? If you're an engineer, I can say, oh yes, well, this is 4 millimeters long, and it uses this gold alloy, blah, 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 because that's going to resonate with the mindset of the engineer. It wouldn't resonate with me, but that's the story they need to hear. On the other hand, if you're the business traveler, I can say, here's the story. The story is all the other business travelers in your sector have chosen this one. It's got 65% market share. You don't have to spend any more time thinking about it. This is the one for you. Different story about exactly the same item. Mm-hmm. And so what we do when we tell a story is not announce it from our point of view. We go with humility to the other person and tell it from their point of view.
Nice. I really appreciate that distinction. There's one of the other things that I really like is you go into all of this content for yourself in terms of this is marketing, and then you really talk about taking bold actions. So if you had your druthers, you have all these people that are going to be reading your book, what kind of actions do you want them to take having read this book?
The thing that's really cool about books, if all I wanted to do was share an idea, I should write a blog post. Mm-hmm. Because when I write a blog post, it reaches 1 million people and it's not a lot of work.
Right.
So why cut down all those trees? Why make a book? And the answer is because for $100, you can buy 8 of them. And if you buy 8 of them and give 7 of them away, now the people around the conference table will all share the same language.
Okay.
And so I learned this with just a fascinating email back and forth almost 20 years ago. This guy sends me a note and he says, I wanted you to know, I work in this company and I've got 2 bosses. It's a matrix organization. And my first boss comes to me and says, you know what we need around here? We need purple cows. We need to get some purple cow stuff going on, blah, blah, blah. And so I'm a go-getter. I Google the term. I discover there's the book. I buy the book. I read the book. And I go to the meeting with the 2 of them. And the second boss says, yeah, we got to get some of that purple cow stuff. And I say, yeah, I read the book. It's really insightful. And my 2 bosses look at each other and they look at me and they say, there's a book? And that was a home run for me, because what it meant was that I had put a term into the world that people around the conference table could have a conversation about. So the reason it's worth making a book is I'm signaling the world. I'm signaling my audience, saying this one, I had 365 posts last year, but this is the only one that I turned into a book. And if you give this to the other people you work with who are on your journey, I think the next board meeting you have will be more interesting. I think the work you create next will be more useful. And I think you'll be more proud of the impact you're making. So that's all I'm asking people to do. Make their own decisions, ignore it if you want, but at least read it together, discuss it, and say, this is where we want to go, or it's not. Because I think we're at a fork in the road. And when you hit a fork in the road, you should take it.
What is beautiful about the purple cow analogy you just used too was because some of that early work that you did, you were looking at actually using your own techniques in the marketing of your book. So
Right.
I remember the purple cow had like the milk container for the first ones. I was lucky enough to get a couple of the free prize inside boxes. I'm sure there's a collector item by now, right? And so I'm really curious, when you go to market this book, 18 bestsellers later, what kind of purple cow ideas are you going to be using to help promote this book?
Okay, well, so it's really important to understand this book is in purple cow, so I don't need to use purple cow ideas.
Fair enough.
This is marketing ideas.
Yeah.
And there are two, and they are very simple. The first one is, I'm seeking the smallest viable audience.
Mm-hmm.
I am not under any illusion. It's coming out the same day. This conversation with us is going live in November. Mm-hmm. Michelle Obama and Bernie Sanders both have books coming out the same day as mine.
Okay.
They're both going to sell way more books than me. Fine. Because my book isn't for those readers. It's for a different reader, the smallest viable audience. What's the most concentrated group I can seek to serve?
Yes.
That idea of rejecting infinity is at the core of so much of the work I'm doing now. It's making me much happier and letting me do better work. And then the second thing is we're going to announce the day after the book comes out that we're doing something really special, a collectible, something that resonates with some people but not with a lot of people, which is, again, we're only making 2,000 sets. Here's a little peek of what we're doing. And what we're doing is I made 19 different covers for the book.
Oh, cool.
And we're selling an 8-pack. So you get 8 books with 8 covers. You don't know which 8 covers. And you get $1,000 worth of coupons and stuff. So the whole thing costs like $150. And the point of it is, if you get 8 books with 8 covers, I'm hoping you'll give them away, and I'm hoping you'll have a conversation. But you'll also have this collectible. What's the purpose of a collectible? It's a different story. It's a story about the fact that this thing on your shelf is almost as valuable as this thing when you read it. Because when it's on your shelf, it's a totem, it's a symbol, it's a signal. And if you're a Kindle reader, then the collectible is not for you. Totally get it.
Yeah.
Again, trying to take our own advice about the fact that what we do for a living is we make change, we create tension. 2,000 people are going to get the collectible. If you don't hurry, you won't. Tension created. If you have the collectible and someone doesn't, tension created. So doing all that on purpose is the opposite of post it online, here it is for everyone, take it or not. No tension when you do that. And so I think a lot about these sorts of things. And then the other part of it is, in January, when we run the marketing seminar again, some people who read the book will take it. And you can say, well, why would they do that? Because they read the book. And the answer is because experiences are different than data. And you might know all the songs from the Grateful Dead by heart. But if the Grateful Dead, if Jerry came back and they were going to have a concert, I'd go. Because you don't go because you want to hear the song. You can hear the song at home for free. You go because you want to be in the place with the other people.
Awesome. And what's fascinating to me about the example you just used is there's a handful of best-selling authors, and there's millions of authors. And so when you look at sort of Amazon, there's so many people out there looking to try to build a best-selling book. And you talked about that tension. So stay with that for a second. If you're someone who's just starting out and you're looking to try to create your first best-selling book, what is the tension you want to be creating? And what are some of the actions that best-selling authors take that so many millions of other authors don't?
Well, the first thing that I would say is that most people who want to write should not try to be a best-selling author. They should just try to be a good author.
Okay.
And what it means to be a good author is that 10 people who read your book can't go to bed tonight without recommending it to someone else.
Nice.
And it turns out if that happens, now 100 people know about your book. And if your book resonates with them, now it's 1,000. And once it's 10,000, you've written a New York Times bestseller.
Beautiful.
So this magical market that we're in with a long tail of 1 million, people who try to reverse engineer a bestseller usually write a lousy book. They write a safe book. They write a mediocre book. They write a manipulative book, but they don't write a really good book, which means it resonates with people. So yesterday I was talking to my friend about a book called Where'd You Go, Bernadette? And it's hysterically funny. And it captured the zeitgeist on every page. I don't think the woman who wrote it sat down to write a bestseller, but she wrote a bestseller.
Yes.
And I get, like you, books in the mail every day.
Yeah.
And most of them are junk. They should have been a blog post. And even then, I probably would have only read half of it. And the reason is because the writer is afraid to bring themselves to the book, and they're just manipulating instead. And in a world where we do not need a book ever again to get information, doing that in a book just so you can somehow game Amazon to be on a bestseller list for 45 minutes and then brag about it, I don't think that's the way I feel about content marketing. It's the same thing. Those are symptoms that aren't related to the cause. Get to the cause. Don't worry about the symptom.
Beautiful. So if I'm hearing you right, it's really focused on the 10 people that can't go to bed at night after having read your book because they need to tell more people.
Exactly.
And if that's your minimum viable audience, focus on them, make them the target of everything you write, give authentically, be vulnerable, put your entire self out there. And it's okay if so many other critics hate it because it wasn't for them.
That's exactly it. Exactly.
Beautiful. Well, listen, we've covered a ton of ground already, but I'm curious, are there other aspects of your book that you'd like to make sure that the audience hears about? Because there's just a wealth of information. I wrote 215 different points in the back of the margin out there because I love what you wrote. So I'm just curious if other people really bold.
There's some deep innovation that will go over the heads of most people who don't want to dive deep into the human condition when they think about marketing. Mm-hmm. But your audience likes that stuff. So I think
yes.
The first thing is that the question that all sentient species ask themselves every day is, who gets to eat lunch first? That if you don't get to eat lunch first in the savannah, you're not going to have grandchildren and your genes aren't going to get passed on. That if the oasis only has a certain amount of water in it and your hippo doesn't get there, your hippo's not going to make it.
Yep.
So human beings are deeply concerned about status.
Yes.
And we don't generally solve status problems by having a fist fight at the water fountain. We do it in extremely complicated ways, right? Oh, you have the new MacBook. I have the old MacBook. Your status is better than mine. Oh, I'm going to wait in line at the Apple store, even though the phone I've got is perfectly fine. I mean, that's the most valuable company in the history of the earth, built on only one thing now, status. There's nothing that Apple does that isn't about status anymore.
Amazing.
Right? Or you think about who sits where at the conference room table and who speaks first and who gets in last and who leaves earlier and who is checking their email during the meeting. These are all status signals.
Yes.
And so as marketers, I think we cannot deny that status drives so much of how people are going to decide. Now, status doesn't mean status symbol. It doesn't mean there's only one axis, which is spend more money, because there are tons of examples where no money is involved, but status is still present. So there are some circles where how many Instagram followers you have matters a lot, and some circles where it doesn't matter at all.
Yep.
Right? So status is the first thing that I could talk about for 10 hours. And then the second one, which goes right near it, is in our culture, and I think all the way back to Roman times, there have been two ways that people adjudicate status, and they are affiliation and dominance. Mm. So affiliation means, what club am I in? Who likes me? Am I an insider? Who's on my right? Who's on my left? What circle am I part of? And dominance means professional wrestling. Who did I just beat? who did my leader just beat? How many runs did my team just score? And if you spend any time at all looking at politics anywhere around the world, you can see that some cultures and some leaders are based on affiliation and some are based on dominance, right? You don't win the Nobel Peace Prize by being a dominator. You win it by being an affiliator. And so if you want to decode how anyone is going to act in any situation, I don't think it's that hard. First, the empathy to understand the stories they tell themselves. Second, their perception of status roles. Third, are they an affiliator or a dominator in this moment? If I know those things, I can tell you exactly what you're going to buy, and I can tell you exactly how you're going to vote, and I can tell you exactly what's making you happy or sad. Because the culture is super complicated, but those are basic human emotions. And so when I, in Silicon Valley, and I live in New York, so I don't spend a lot of time with people from the Valley, they'll talk to you about, processor speed or this thing or that thing. That's not why someone uses Dropbox. That's not why someone uses Google to search instead of DuckDuckGo or vice versa, right? Like the people who are using DuckDuckGo, and I'm one of them, will tell you it's about striking a blow for privacy and security and everything else. But it's really about status within our tiny circle. It's really about affiliation within our tiny circle. And so every time I see the little DuckDuckGo logo, I go, oh yeah, that's me. I'm one of those people. That's what they sell.
This is my tribe. These are my people.
Exactly.
People like us go to search engines like that.
Exactly.
Yesterday I had a really fascinating conversation with the chief marketing officer of Aston Martin. And what he pulled out was, he said, there's only been 85,000 Aston Martins ever sold in our 105-year history.
There you go.
So I think about status in that way, that is like for luxury cars, it's like, okay, you have $200,000 you want to spend, you can buy a Ferrari, you can buy, Aston Martin. It's now of those ultra elite tribes, which are the tribes you're going to have? Toyota builds 85,000 cars in 3 months. Right. Yep. So think of the contrast there in terms of the different ways that people view status symbols, even in the vehicles that they choose to buy. Right?
That's right. I mean, an Aston Martin is a story you tell yourself.
Yes.
And it's mostly a story about Ian Fleming. And
James Bond, maybe.
Right? And I can hear the music in my head right now.
That's right, and, 007.
And if you're a multimillionaire, what a bargain.
Yeah.
What a bargain to be able to have a little piece of the meme and the icon that decided who you were going to become whenever you thought about status and affiliation and dominance and the narrative of who you were in the world. Wow. For only $200,000, I get to think I'm James Bond? Bring it on.
Well, and then for those people who have an Aston Martin, they're like, wait a second, hold on. We don't want to let those guys in. And so they have like a special car they're creating with Red Bull. And there's only going to be 150 of them made. And those are $3 million a piece. So it's like, if you want to get into a really big club, there's just no end to this. I mean, it's fascinating when you break down the psychology of why someone would buy a $3 million car.
Right.
It's status. It's exactly what you just said.
Exactly. And you can get the same feeling by buying a Rogue chocolate bar for $12.
Yes.
Or an Askinosie bar for $8. Yes. Different flavors of the same. Who do I belong to? What am I standing for? What is it? Right. So I've decided not to have an Aston Martin. I have a Toyota Prius. Yeah. But I got an Aston Martin basket full of chocolate over there because I get the same feeling without having to put it in my garage.
Amazing. Amazing. Seth, I want to thank you. First of all, congratulations again, the American Marketing Association Hall of Fame. You totally deserve it very well. It's amazing, all of your accomplishments. For 30 years, you've just been giving and giving and giving, and it shows. Like, it's not just your best-selling books, but just how authentically you show up, whether it's a speaking engagement, whether it's your own workshops, the work that you do. It is really an honor and a privilege to know you. So I just want to thank you for your time today. This has been really fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. I really appreciate it. I know how hard it is to do this on a regular basis. So the fact that you invited me in is really great. So thanks.
Thank you, sir. Take care.
Okay, so